Hello third graders, and welcome to another English video lesson. My name is Irena, and today I will take you through the lesson called If Only I Hadn't Done That. Here are the outcomes for the lesson. Hopefully, when we finish it, you will be able to analyze a text related to past events. You should also be able to express regrets or perhaps wishes related to those past events. Just like every time, you will need something to write with and something to write on. You will need a device with internet access. From time to time, you will be asked to pause the video and do the task listed on the screen. As this is the best way to achieve the intended outcomes, I strongly suggest that you really do that. You can also pause or replay the video anytime you feel the need to check something and to make sure that you got it right. So, let's begin.
So let's see. So far, we have discussed moral dilemmas and difficult choices. Sometimes, it is hard to say whether our choice is the right one. We can only see that after a while, when we look back and reflect on things we did. Unfortunately, sometimes our choices turn out to be the wrong ones, but it is only clear with the wisdom or benefit of hindsight. In such situations, we can only wish we had done things differently. Let's have a look at one such example. Look at these words. Teenagers, decisions, fitting in, FOMO, DUI, scholarship, joyride, choices, car theft, peer pressure. Do you think you can guess what the story we are going to read will be about? Pause the video and write down your ideas. Also, before you read, it might be a good idea to open the link and look at the flashcards. Perhaps the items listed there might be new to you, so it would be useful to study them before we start. If you already know those words and expressions, they can be a useful reminder. Also, there are some questions for you to consider while reading the story. For starters, why was Pete unhappy with his life? Which event got him in serious trouble? And what were the consequences? The story we'll read is called Pete's Story, and you can access it anytime using the link on this QR code. But now we are going to read and listen to it together.
Pete's story. Many things in life are just a matter of perspective. It all depends on how you look at things. When it comes to Pete, some would say he had everything. Others would claim he had nothing. Unfortunately, Pete was in the latter group. Even though he was an excellent student whose achievements in STEM subjects were admiring, Pete wasn't happy about his life. During his senior year in high school, he felt like he was spending too much time studying and not enough having fun. His few friends were also focused on their studies, but he wanted more. The fear of missing out was too strong. Pete believed there is a whole other world he needs to explore. He desperately wanted to be a part of the cool crew, spend his weekends going out and partying. He just didn't know how to get to that. So, he started doing the same things those guys did. He got a fake ID and started going clubbing. A conversation here and there, reminding them that they were in the same class and he was in. Pete was over the moon with his new popular status. What he refers to as his past life of academic achievement and college scholarships, was long gone and forgotten. Pretty soon, a few drinks at a party became something normal. It didn't even take a lot of peer pressure for Pete to start experimenting with drugs. Of course, all of that had to be paid for, so Pete started taking money from his parents' wallets without asking for it. From time to time he heard this tiny voice inside his head questioning his decisions and analyzing his choices, but he didn't pay much attention to it. After all, he was having the time of his life. And then, one Friday night, Pete's new friends decided their regular way of partying was too boring. They were sitting in a bar when someone noticed a nice sports car outside and suggested going for a joyride. They didn't think of anything. The fact that stealing a car is a serious crime didn't come to mind, nor did they think that none of them had a driver's license and that they all had been drinking. One of his new friends broke into the car and Pete was the one driving. He had never felt such a rush. They were speeding around the town until a police siren broke the spell. They were all charged with car theft and DUI. Since Peter was the one driving, he was also charged with driving without a driver's license. The few hours spent at the police station while waiting for his parents to come and pick him up turned out to be the longest night in his life. And that was just the beginning. A few weeks later, Pete had to show up at juvenile court. The seriousness of the charges against him and the fact that he was almost 18 were crucial for the judge. Pete was sent to a rehabilitation center where he was supposed to work on his drinking problem and was forbidden to take the driving test for the next 3 years. The punishment for the car theft were hundreds of hours of community service. And it didn't end there. Pete lost his college scholarship. His parents and his teachers didn't hide their disappointment. Just a few months prior to those events, it seemed only sky was the limit to Pete's achievements. All of a sudden, the only way to pay for college tuition was to get a job which he couldn't because of the community service order. This time, Pete literally had nothing. With the benefit of hindsight, he would only wish he had done things differently.
Let's see if you were right. The first question was, why was Pete unhappy with his life? Pete was unhappy because he felt like he was wasting his life studying. He experienced the fear of missing out, and he wanted to be a part of the cool crew and spend his weekends going out and partying. If your answer was similar to this one, then you got it right. The second question referred to the event that got him in serious trouble. Pete got in serious trouble after he and his friends stole a car and went for a joyride. He didn't have his driver's license and they all had been drinking. The third question was about the consequences. Pete was sent to a rehabilitation center, he was forbidden to take the driving test for the next 3 years, and he was ordered hundreds of hours of community service. He also lost his college scholarship. So, not really a nice experience, isn't it? Let's see, what is Pete thinking now? With the benefit of hindsight, he could only wish he had done things differently. What do you think is going on through Pete's head right now? Read the story once again and think about the wrong decisions Pete had made. What do you think his thoughts are at the moment? Pause the video and write them down. Write at least 3 ideas. I guess you have written something like this. I wish I hadn't gone out last Friday. If only I hadn't had anything to drink. If I had thought about the consequences of my actions, I wouldn't have lost my scholarship. These were some of the things that might be going on through Pete's head right now. Let's have a look at them once again. I wish I hadn't gone out last Friday. If only I hadn't had anything to drink. If I had thought about the consequences of my actions, I wouldn't have lost my scholarship. What do you notice? Which structures do we use to express wishes and regrets about the past? Look at the expressions in blue. What can you see? Well, when we want to express wishes and regrets related to past events, we have several options. We can use I wish with past perfect. For example, I wish I had thought about it sooner. Or, I wish we hadn't stolen that car. You probably remember, past perfect is a tense formed with the auxiliary had and the past participle of the verb. We can also use if only at the beginning of a sentence, also with past perfect. If only I had stayed home. If only I hadn't made such a stupid decision. Using past perfect instead of past simple when referring to past events shows that we want a different outcome and not the one that had actually happened. Wishes and regrets can also be expressed with third conditional clauses. If I hadn't had those drinks, the judge wouldn't have sentenced me for DUI. We wouldn't have taken the car for the joyride if we hadn't been drunk. In the main sentence, we use wouldn't have plus past participle or would have if it's affirmative, and in the conditional clause starting with if, we use past perfect. Let's practice. This link will take you to a worksheet with a couple of third conditional sentences and help you check if you remember which structures to use to express wishes and regrets. The second link will take you to a worksheet to help you check your understanding of these structures. I suggest you pause the video and complete both worksheets now. Any other regrets Pete might have? What do you think? Could you complete the sentence beginnings with your own ideas? I wish we, if only I, if only we, if I had or hadn't, I or we would or wouldn't. Pause the video once again and write down the ideas. I guess you have something like this. Pete might say, I wish I had been smarter. I wish we hadn't gone clubbing last Friday. If only I hadn't driven that car. If only we had stayed at home. If I hadn't started hanging out with them, I wouldn't have done so many stupid things. And I wouldn't have disappointed my parents if I had made smarter decisions. Can you relate? Do you have any regrets? Think about the situations when you made wrong choices and complete the sentences. I wish I, if only I, if I hadn't, I wouldn't, and so on. Pause the video and write them down. And finally, before we finish today's lesson, let's have a look at how you did. Make sure to check whether you can understand the text about someone's choices and their consequences, whether you can express wishes that things had happened differently, express regrets about past events, and use third conditional to express regrets. These are our outcomes, and these are the things that we try to achieve. I believe that you did great.
We have reached the end of today's lesson. I hope you found it useful and that it gave you something to think about. I also hope that you will join us again next time. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.